Okay, hello and welcome to this talk. My name is Bennett from Archi Hacks, and needless to say, I'm super excited to be a part of this talk. So thank you, Chaos, for inviting me, and today I'm gonna be talking about things I wish I knew before I graduated from architecture school. Now, there are 3 lessons I'm gonna be talking about, and I believe that if you do all these, you're gonna make the most out of your school, and you will have no regrets looking back. For those of you guys who are not in school and not planning to go back to school anytime soon, you can still probably find a way to do this from your workplace as well. So, hope you guys will find this interesting, and let's dive right into it. So, number 1 tip I want to talk about is that you should go out there, try different things out, and don't be afraid of failing. I know this sounds a little bit cliche, but I completely understand how difficult this is. Because number 1, as a student, I find that it's a little bit hard to kind of go out there and do something different because you're afraid of judgment. And the other thing is that as a student, it feels so easy to feel like you're gonna do something wrong. And this is completely fair, I was just there, several years ago, and it all makes sense. But in retrospect, what I wish I would have done in school is actually the opposite. I kind of wish that when I find something that was interesting, I feel like I should have just dug deep into it and stay my ground, even when I face a little bit of pushback from the desk crits and other professors. Because at the end of the day, what you're left with is your work and your process and your portfolio. Nobody at your workplace or grad school really cares about what other people, thought about your project or what kind of mark you got on each of these projects. At the end, if they see that you have the potential to become a great student or employee, that's all that really matters. And in order to develop all these characteristics, you really have to invest in yourself. And that is exploring what you think is interesting and dig deep into it. Now let's think about a scenario. You are following the curriculum and suddenly you find structure really interesting. And then what I would advise is apply structures to everything that you're doing. Like create a crazy cantilever building for your studio project and do some extra research on top of that. And before you know it, you'll become an expert in that field. And it'll propel you to learn a lot more than you would have originally done had you just followed a curriculum. And another example is let's say you're super into rendering, then I'd say just go for it. Create the most beautiful visualization you can possibly make for your project. Maybe your professors hate it, maybe they're super traditional, but if this is what interests you, I'd say go for it. And at the end of the day, if you create something that is truly interesting, they will have to give you points for that one. And a part of it is negotiation and convincing, but all those things aside, at the end of the day, you should feel satisfied with the projects that you're spending months designing. Now let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is that I shouldn't be too afraid of being not original. I know designing can feel like an exercise of creating something original, but that could actually hinder you from being original. I know this sounds a little bit confusing, but let me explain. Buildings and architecture has evolved over thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. And if you try to invent something completely original, without no background knowledge whatsoever, all you're gonna invent is a primitive hut, stick and frames. That's all you can do within your lifetime. But if you open up your eyes to learning from other people's and examples, you'll be able to fast forward thousands of years of learning. So what should you do instead? So if I could go back to architecture school, what I would first do is go to references. So let's say my project is about designing a mixed-use building in an urban environment. There's hundreds, thousands of examples of this kind of building. So I would run down to the library or open up ArcDaily or other websites and look up mixed-use building and just consume all the knowledge and all the examples that you can find. And take note of things you find is interesting and leave other things that you think is less interesting. And if you find room for improvement, awesome. This is how you become original. So start collecting all these little references that you like and you think are cool to try, and then bring them into your site and your project. And of course, you shouldn't just copy and paste the whole building into your site. That's not how we should do it. Always put your own twist to it and be inventive. And steal like an artist. So that is lesson number 2. Now, last but not least, so this is about sharing your work. Now, as a student, I was a little bit hesitant about sharing my work. I feel like I put so much of myself into it. I don't want to like get judged by other people. And worst of all, I don't want people to copy my work. So I kind of like hid them away. I only show it to a couple of my friends, and then, I've done all that. So it all completely makes sense. But let's think about it this way. Buildings. Ultimately, what we're doing is to build buildings. And buildings are meant for sharing. Unless you're, of course, designing maybe something like a prison. But even prisons, like the tenants change. So it's meant for sharing. In the end, if something gets built, it becomes public and everyone can know about it. So if you think about it this way, what's the point? What's the point of hiding things, right? Once you start sharing your work and what you think is like very interesting about what you did, you'll be surprised how quickly other people will also open themselves up. And you get to kind of peek into their own ingenuity as well. So as opposed to someone who's bottled up all their know-hows and interesting tips and tricks into their own corner, they are sort of like frogs in the well. And on the other hand, if you started sharing and build a community of people who share their tips and tricks and all their ideas and designs, you will realize that you will quickly push each other to new limits and take each other to a new level. And then this is a part where I kind of want to talk about my personal story. After graduation, I started this YouTube channel called Archi Hacks. And on the channel, I shared videos about tutorials, knowledge sharing about softwares such as Rhino, Photoshop, and Illustrator. And at first, it was a little bit slow, but down the road, I was able to connect with tens of thousands of subscribers and got reached out by really famous companies such as Architizer, Chaos, and Epic Games. All these companies I wouldn't have even imagined collaborating with just a few years ago. And all this happened within the span of just a few years. So I'm like looking forward to what's going to happen down the road and really appreciative of what has happened so far. And that being said, I think you should really try this yourself and experience this magic of sharing. And as a finishing note, I wanted to talk about Archive, which is a website I co-founded with people I connected online. And this is a website where you can share your work with other people around the globe. And this website is specifically designed for architects. So hope you guys will find it interesting. Go check it out at arc-hive.com. So that being said, hope you guys found these lessons useful and try implementing a couple of them during your education. So to recap, first off, don't be afraid of trying new things. Dive deep into what inspires you. And number 2, don't be afraid of not being original. Learn from other people, study precedents, and from there you can also find what inspires you. And then number 3, share your ingenuity and then people will share them back to you. And then we can all collaborate, help each other to make the world a better place for the future. So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the talk today. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!